It was easy to discover that the delicate care of a mother, unwilling to part from her son, and yet aware that a young man of the Viscount's age required the full exercise of his liberty, had chosen this habitation for Albert. There were not lacking, however, evidences of what we may call the intelligent egoism of a youth who is charmed with the indolent, careless life of an only son, and who lives as it were in a gilded cage. By means of the two windows looking into the street, Albert could see all that passed. The sight of what is going on is necessary to young men, who always want to see the world traverse their horizon, even if that horizon is only a public thoroughfare. Then, should anything appear to merit a more minute examination, Albert de Morcerf could follow up his researches by means of a small gate, similar to that close to the concierge's door, and which merits a particular description. It was a little entrance that seemed never to have been opened since the house was built, so entirely was it covered with dust and dirt, but the well-oiled hinges and locks told quite another story. This door was a mockery to the concierge, from whose vigilance and jurisdiction it was free, and, like that famous portal in the Arabian Nights, opening at the Sesame of Ali Baba, it was wont to swing backward at a cabalistic word or a concerted tap from without from the sweetest voices or whitest fingers in the world. At the end of a long corridor, with which the door communicated, and which formed the antechamber, was, on the right, Albert's breakfast room, looking into the court, and on the left the salon, looking into the garden. Shrubs and creeping plants covered the windows, and hid from the garden and court these two apartments, the only rooms into which, as they were on the ground floor, the prying eyes of the curious could penetrate. On the floor above were similar rooms, with the addition of a third, formed out of the antechamber. These three rooms were a salon, a boudoir, and a bedroom. The salon downstairs was only an Algerian divan, for the use of smokers. The boudoir upstairs communicated with the bedchamber by an invisible door on the staircase. It was evident that every precaution had been taken. Above this floor was a large atelier, which had been increased in size by pulling down the partitions, a pandemonium, in which the artist and the dandy strove for preeminence. There were collected and piled up all Albert's successive caprices: hunting horns, bass viols, flutes, a whole orchestra, for Albert had not a taste but a fancy for music, easels, palettes, brushes, pencils, for music had been succeeded by painting, foils, boxing gloves, broadswords, and single sticks, for, following the example of the fashionable young men of the time, Albert de Morcerf cultivated, with far more perseverance than music and drawing, the three arts that complete a dandy's education, i.e., fencing, boxing, and single stick, and it was here that he received Grisier, Cook, and Charles Leboucher. The rest of the furniture of this privileged apartment consisted of old cabinets, filled with Chinese porcelain and Japanese vases, Luca della Robbia faience, and Palissy platters, of old armchairs, in which perhaps had sat Henry IV. Or Sully, Louis XIII. Or Richelieu, for two of these armchairs, adorned with a carved shield, on which were engraved the fleur-de-lis of France on an azure field, evidently came from the Louvre, or, at least, some royal residence. Over these dark and somber chairs were thrown splendid stuffs, dyed beneath Persia's sun, or woven by the fingers of the women of Calcutta or of Chandernagore. What these stuffs did there, it was impossible to say. They awaited, while gratifying the eyes, a destination unknown to their owner himself. In the meantime they filled the place with their golden and silky reflections. In the center of the room was a roller and Blanchet baby grand piano in rosewood, but holding the potentialities of an orchestra in its narrow and sonorous cavity, and groaning beneath the weight of the chefs d'oeuvre of Beethoven, Weber, Mozart, Haydn, Gratry, and Porpora. On the walls, over the doors, on the ceiling, were swords, daggers, Malay creeses, maces, battle-axes, gilded, damasked, and inlaid suits of armor, dried plants, minerals, and stuffed birds, their flame-colored wings outspread in motionless flight, and their beaks forever open. This was Albert's favorite lounging place. However, The morning of the appointment, the young man had established himself in the small salon downstairs. There, on a table, surrounded at some distance by a large and luxurious divan, every species of tobacco known, from the yellow tobacco of Petersburg to the black of Sinai, and so on along the scale from Maryland and Puerto Rico to Latakia, was exposed in pots of crackled earthenware of which the Dutch are so fond. Beside them, in boxes of fragrant wood, were ranged, according to their size and quality, pueros, regalias, Havanas, and Manillas, and, in an open cabinet, a collection of German pipes, of chibouques, with their amber mouthpieces ornamented with coral, and of narghiles, with their long tubes of Morocco, awaiting the caprice or the sympathy of the smokers. Albert had himself presided at the arrangement, or, rather, the symmetrical derangement, which, after coffee, the guests at a breakfast of modern days love to contemplate through the vapor that escapes from their mouths, and ascends in long and fanciful wreaths to the ceiling. At 9:45, a valet entered. He composed, with a little groom named John, and who only spoke English, all Albert's establishment, although the cook of the hotel was always at his service, and on great occasions the Count's chasseur also. This valet, whose name was Germain, and who enjoyed the entire confidence of his young master, held in one hand a number of papers, and in the other a packet of letters, which he gave to Albert. Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives, selected two written in a small and delicate hand, and enclosed in scented envelopes, opened them and perused their contents with some attention. "How did these letters come?" said he. "One by the post, Madame Danglars' footman left the other." "Let Madame Danglars know that I accept the place she offers me in her box. Wait, then, during the day, tell Rosa that when I leave the opera I will sup with her as she wishes. Take her 6 bottles of different wine, Cyprus, sherry, and Malaga, and a barrel of Ostend oysters. Get them at Borel's, and be sure you say they are for me." "At what o'clock, sir, do you breakfast?" "What time is it now?" 9:15. "Very well, at 10:30. Debray will, perhaps, be obliged to go to the minister, and besides, Albert looked at his tablets, it is the hour I told the Count, 21st May, at 10:30, and though I do not much rely upon his promise, I wish to be punctual. Is the Countess up yet? If you wish, I will inquire. Yes, ask her for one of her liqueur célérates, mine is incomplete, and tell her I shall have the honor of seeing her about 3 o'clock, and that I request permission to introduce someone to her. The valet left the room. Albert threw himself on the divan, tore off the cover of 2 or 3 of the papers, looked at the theater announcements, made a face seeing they gave an opera, and not a ballet, hunted vainly amongst the advertisements for a new tooth powder of which he had heard, and threw down, one after the other, the 3 leading papers of Paris, muttering, "These papers become more and more stupid every day." A moment after, a carriage stopped before the door, and the servant announced M. Lucien Debray. A tall young man, with light hair, clear gray eyes, and thin and compressed lips, dressed in a blue coat with beautifully carved gold buttons, a white neckcloth, and a tortoiseshell eyeglass suspended by a silken thread, and which, by an effort of the superciliary and zygomatic muscles, he fixed in his eye, entered, with a half-official air, without smiling or speaking. "Good morning, Lucien, good morning," said Albert, "your punctuality really alarms me." "What do I say?" "Punctuality." "You, whom I expected last, you arrive at 5 minutes to 10, when the time fixed was 1/2 past. Has the ministry resigned?" "No, my dear fellow," returned the young man, seating himself on the divan, "reassure yourself, we are tottering always, but we never fall, and I begin to believe that we shall pass into a state of immobility, and then the affairs of the peninsula will completely consolidate us." "Ah, true, you drive Don Carlos out of Spain." "No, no, my dear fellow, do not confound our plans. We take him to the other side of the French frontier, and offer him hospitality at Bourges." "At Bourges?" "Yes, he has not much to complain of. Bourges is the capital of Charles VII. Do you not know that all Paris knew it yesterday, and the day before it had already transpired on the Bourse, and M. Danglars, I do not know by what means that man contrives to obtain intelligence as soon as we do, made 1,000,000. And you another order, for I see you have a blue ribbon at your buttonhole. Yes, they sent me the order of Charles III, returned Debray, carelessly. Come, do not affect indifference, but confess you were pleased to have it. Oh, it is very well as a finish to the toilet. It looks very neat on a black coat buttoned up. And makes you resemble the Prince of Wales or the Duke of Reichstadt. It is for that reason you see me so early. Because you have the order of Charles III, and you wish to announce the good news to me? No, because I passed the night writing letters, 25 dispatches. I returned home at daybreak, and strove to sleep, but my head ached and I got up to have a ride for an hour.